In 2020, one of the most technically brilliant car companies on Earth was quietly weeks away from running out of money. Not a startup, not some doomed electric vehicle gamble. McLaren, the company that builds Formula One cars, that built the legendary McLaren F1, that puts carbon fiber and race-derived engineering into road cars most manufacturers can only dream about, that McLaren was so close to the edge that it did something almost unthinkable for a company whose entire identity is heritage. It sold its own headquarters. It sold its collection of historic cars, its own history, just to keep the lights on and finish building its next model. Now hold that image in your head, because here's the part that makes no sense. At the exact same time this was happening, another part of McLaren was turning into one of the single best investments in the entire sporting world. A group of investors put money into the McLaren Formula One team in 2020. Within a few years, that stake was worth roughly 10 times what they paid. 10 times. Same name, same badge, same company. One half selling the furniture to survive, the other half minting one of the greatest returns in modern sports. And sitting right in the middle of that contradiction is you, the person thinking about buying the actual car, the road car, the thing with the doors that open upward and the engine behind your head. And what almost nobody tells you before you sign is that a McLaren road car is one of the most financially misunderstood objects you can buy at this price point, because it behaves nothing like the Ferrari it's parked next to, nothing like the Lamborghini, and absolutely nothing like the Formula One team that shares its name. So let's take it apart. Not the lap times, not the horsepower, the money. Where it goes, why these cars fall in value the way they do, and why the smartest people in this world treat a McLaren as something completely different from what the brochure is selling. Before any of the numbers make sense, you have to understand that McLaren isn't one business, it's three, stacked on top of each other, and they have wildly different economics. The first McLaren is the racing team. This is the crown jewel. A Formula One team is, in the modern era, a franchise, a protected, appreciating asset, like owning a team in a major sports league. There are only 10 of them on the entire planet. The spending is capped so they can't bankrupt themselves, and the sport's global popularity has exploded. This McLaren is worth billions and climbing. The second McLaren is the road car company, McLaren Automotive. This is the one that builds the cars you can actually buy, and it is a fundamentally harder business. It has no mass-market parent to absorb its losses. It can't share engines and factories with a lineup of ordinary cars, the way a Porsche or an Audi can. It builds low volumes of extremely complex machines and has to fund all of its own research, and has lost enormous amounts of money. The third McLaren is the individual car, the one in your garage, and its value is shaped by everything happening in that second business, the volumes, the model launches, the financial pressure. When the car company makes decisions to survive, the value of your specific car is often the collateral damage. Here's the thing to hold on to. Almost everything you're about to learn comes down to one simple fact. The McLaren name is legendary because of the racing, but the car in your driveway isn't the racing team. It's the product of the fragile, capital-hungry business in the middle. And that business behaves in ways that quietly cost owners money.
To understand the car, you have to understand how close the whole thing came to collapse. McLaren's road car company is young. Ferrari has been selling road cars since the 1940s, Lamborghini since the 1960s. McLaren Automotive, in its modern form, only started building cars in 2011. That youth matters enormously, and we'll come back to it, because it's the hidden reason your car loses value. But youth also meant fragility. When the pandemic hit in 2020 and supercar sales briefly froze, McLaren didn't have decades of reserves or a giant parent company to lean on. It had to lay off around a quarter of its workforce, roughly 1,200 people. It arranged emergency financing, and in the move that tells you everything, it raised money against its own history. The Woking headquarters, one of the most beautiful car factories in the world, was sold and leased back. The Heritage car collection was sold. The company was, in effect, pawning its past to buy itself a future. And it still wasn't enough to make the business stable. Look at the losses. In one recent year, McLaren reported a pre-tax loss of around £276 million over just 9 months. In another, the annual loss was reported at a staggering £924 million. These are not rounding errors. This is a company that for years spent dramatically more than it made. So, who kept it alive? Not car buyers, governments. McLaren was rescued and ultimately bought outright by sovereign wealth funds. First, Bahrain's investment fund, which poured well over £1 billion into the company across a few years, and then, when even that wasn't sustainable, a fund from Abu Dhabi. In the space of a single year, the McLaren car company was fully taken over by one government's fund and then largely sold to another. Think about what that means for a second. The reason you can walk into a showroom and buy a new McLaren at all is that two oil-rich states decided to keep an unprofitable British supercar company alive. That is the financial reality sitting underneath the beautiful carbon fiber bodywork, and it has direct consequences for what happens to your money the moment you drive one home.
Here is the single most important number in this entire video, and it's the one McLaren would prefer you didn't dwell on. A McLaren 720S, by nearly universal agreement, one of the best supercars ever built, a car that will humiliate machines costing twice as much, can lose roughly 30% of its value in its first 2 to 3 years. Some analyses put the first 6 months drop alone at 10 to 15%, simply from registering the car and turning it from new into used. Now compare that to its arch-rival. A Ferrari from the same era, something like an F8 Tributo, might lose only 10 to 15% over a similar period. Same money in, wildly different money out. Two cars, both stunning, both absurdly fast, and one of them hands back tens of thousands of dollars more of your money than the other, for reasons that have nothing to do with how good the car is. Let's put real numbers on it. A 720S might sticker somewhere around $300,000 to $360,000 once you've optioned it. Drive it, enjoy it, keep it clean, and a few years later you may be looking at a resale value closer to $220,000 to $260,000. That's a loss that can run well past 6 figures on a car you barely broke in. And here's the cruel twist. This happens because the cars are so good and so relatively affordable to buy used. The 720S is the only car in its peer group you can find at genuinely steep discounts slightly used, which is fantastic if you're buying and brutal if you already own one. The very thing that makes a used McLaren the bargain of the supercar world is the thing punishing the person who bought it new. So why does this happen? Why does one of the best cars on the road bleed value faster than its rivals? The answer is 3 things working together, and none of them is about the driving.
Reason 1, the brand is young. This sounds soft, but it's deeply financial. Ferrari has spent 70 years building an aura of exclusivity, heritage, and desire that lets it command prices and hold value almost regardless of the actual car. McLaren, as a modern road car brand, is barely more than a decade old. It hasn't had time to build that mystique, the deep, irrational, multi-generational want that keeps resale prices high. When you buy a McLaren, you're buying an incredible machine, but you're not buying 70 years of accumulated desire. And in this market, desire is worth more than horsepower. Reason 2, they made too many. This is the big one, and it's the exact opposite of the Ferrari playbook. Ferrari's entire financial strategy is scarcity, deliberately building fewer cars than the market wants, so demand always outstrips supply and values stay firm. McLaren, trying to grow fast and fund that hungry business, did the reverse. Between roughly 2018 and 2024, it expanded production aggressively. More cars built means more cars eventually flooding the used market, all competing for the same limited pool of buyers. Basic supply and demand, flood the market, and prices sink. McLaren, in effect, spent years quietly undermining its own resale values in order to generate the cash it desperately needed to survive. Reason 3, the model treadmill. McLaren releases new variants and special editions at a relentless pace, a hotter version, a track version, a slightly updated version, often within a year or two of the last one. Every time a newer, sharper model appears, the one you bought instantly feels a step behind and its value takes another hit. The person who paid full price for the latest thing watches it become last year's thing almost immediately. It's a treadmill, and the owner is the one who pays to keep it running. Put those three together, a young brand, too much supply, and constant model churn, and you get a car that is spectacular to drive and financially punishing to own new. None of these are flaws in the engineering. They're all consequences of that fragile middle business trying to survive.
Depreciation is the giant invisible cost, but the visible ones are real too, and with McLaren, they carry a specific kind of risk. Start with insurance. On a $300,000 plus supercar that a table of actuaries considers both very fast and very expensive to repair, expect premiums running into the thousands, sometimes many thousands, per year, depending on the driver, the location, and the model. Then maintenance, and here's where McLaren's situation bites again. These are complex, carbon-intensive, low-volume cars. Servicing is expensive, specialist, and there simply aren't McLaren dealers on every corner, the way there are for mass-market brands. Annual servicing can run into the thousands, and unlike some rivals, McLaren has historically not bundled in the years of free maintenance that, say, Ferrari uses to protect its used values, which is part of why those used values are softer. Then there's the reliability question that haunts the brand's reputation. McLarens have carried a persistent perception of electrical and mechanical gremlins, a reputation that may be worse than the current reality, but perception is financial. A brand seen as fragile is a brand whose used cars are harder to sell, which feeds right back into that depreciation. Every nervous used buyer who walks away is downward pressure on the value of your car. And then the wear items. Carbon ceramic brakes that can cost many thousands to replace, specialist tires, and bodywork that, being carbon fiber, is genuinely expensive to repair properly after even a minor knock. Stack it all up, and past any warranty, a realistic owner should budget meaningfully, several thousand a year in running costs on top of the depreciation. But make no mistake, the depreciation is still the headline. Everything else is a rounding error next to the value quietly draining out of the car in the first 3 years.
Let's make it concrete. Same brand, same badge, two very different endings. The bad outcome. You walk into a dealer and buy a brand new McLaren, the latest Super Series or a new Artura, fully spec'd, around $270,000 to $350,000 out the door. You drive it, you love it because it's genuinely one of the greatest driving machines ever made, and that is the entire point. But 3 years later, a newer variant is launched, the used market is thick with similar cars, and the brand's soft resale reputation is working against you. You go to sell, and you're offered somewhere in the low $200,000. You've lost well over $100,000 plus running costs in 3 years. You did nothing wrong. You bought the wrong McLaren at the wrong point in its life. The good outcome. You ignore the new showroom entirely. Instead, you let someone else absorb that brutal first 3 years depreciation, and you buy their 2- or 3-year-old 720S for around $230,000, a car that cost $340,000 new. You've just saved over $100,000 for a car that is mechanically almost identical, and every bit is spectacular. Because the steepest part of the curve is behind it, your ongoing depreciation is far gentler. You run it, enjoy it, maintain it well, and sell it a few years later, having lost a fraction of what the original owner lost. Same car, completely different financial experience. The difference wasn't the McLaren, it was when you bought it. And then there's the third path, the one the serious collectors play, because not every McLaren depreciates.
Everything I've said applies to the normal McLarens, the series production cars built in meaningful numbers.
But there's a second category that behaves in the complete opposite direction, and it reveals what McLaren's road cars could have been. The truly limited landmark McLarens don't fall in value, they soar. The original McLaren F1 from the 1990s, only 106 ever built, sold new for around $815,000 and now changes hands at auction for well into the tens of millions of dollars. The P1, McLaren's hybrid hypercar, was capped at 375 units and now sells for roughly double what it cost new. Cars like the Senna, the Speedtail, the ultra-rare Sabre, and special editions like the 720S Le Mans, these appreciate because they have the one thing the regular cars don't: genuine, permanent scarcity. See the pattern? The McLarens that make money are the ones McLaren couldn't make many of. The moment the company builds a car in volume to generate cash, that car depreciates. The moment it builds a car in tiny capped numbers, that car appreciates. It's the same brand, the same engineering, the same badge, and the entire financial outcome flips based on one variable: how many exist. Which means the regular McLaren buyer and the limited McLaren buyer are playing two completely different games. One is buying a rapidly depreciating consumer product, the other is buying a genuinely scarce collectible. They just happen to share a showroom. So if the ordinary cars depreciate this hard, the company keeps needing government bailouts, and only the unobtainable limited editions actually make money, why would anyone buy a normal McLaren? Because, and this is the part the spreadsheets miss, as a pure driving machine, many people consider McLaren the best in the business. Not the flashiest, not the most prestigious, the best. These are cars engineered by a company that lives and breathes Formula One, with carbon fiber structures and suspension wizardry that rivals costing far more can't match. For a certain kind of enthusiast, a McLaren delivers a purity of driving experience that a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, for all their glamour, simply doesn't. And once you accept the depreciation for what it is, a strange kind of value appears. Because McLarens fall so hard and so fast, the used market is a genuine bargain. A lightly used McLaren might be the most performance per dollar you can buy anywhere on Earth. The original owner ate the loss so you don't have to. If you buy at the right point in the curve, the very depreciation that ruins the first owner becomes the second owner's best friend. So the people who truly win with McLaren fall into two camps. There are the collectors who buy only the scarce, limited cars and treat them as appreciating assets, the same scarcity game Ferrari plays deliberately. And there are the savvy enthusiasts who let someone else take the depreciation hit and then buy an almost new supercar for a massive discount, getting 95% of the car for 65% of the price. The person who loses is the one in the middle, the buyer who pays full sticker for an ordinary McLaren and sells it 3 years later. So, can a McLaren make you money? Almost never if you buy an ordinary one new. Possibly if you buy one of the rare limited editions, and you can save an enormous amount if you buy someone else's a few years old. But step back and look at the whole picture, because it's genuinely one of the strangest in the car world. Here is a company whose Formula One team became a multi-billion-dollar franchise and one of the best investments in sports, while its road car division lost so much money it had to sell its own headquarters and be rescued twice by foreign governments. Here is a brand that makes what many consider the finest driving machines on the planet, and yet those machines lose value faster than lesser rivals. Here is a badge that means untold wealth on a race car and steady depreciation on a road car. That's the trick hiding in plain sight. When you buy a McLaren road car, you are not buying a piece of that racing empire. You're buying the product of the fragile business in the middle, the one that had to flood the market and chase volume just to survive. The magic of the McLaren name was built on the track. The car in your garage is paying the bill for keeping the company that owns that name alive. So, if you want one, and honestly, you probably should because they're extraordinary, just go in with your eyes open. Don't buy the story, buy the car. Let someone else pay for the privilege of being first. Because with McLaren, more than almost any other brand, the question was never whether it's a great car. It obviously is. The only question that decides whether you win or lose is which McLaren you buy and exactly when you buy it.